I really thought that if I tried hard enough that I could like buy all of the Oscar stuff. Like, that is what I was actively trying to do, that I was gonna buy, you know, all, and so there'd be like a figure of Oscar in a bikini, and I would buy, and there are all the different variants. So there was Oscar in a red bikini. These are all like identical figures, okay? And she's like in a red bikini, pink, yellow, white. I would buy every version, you know, of all the, and also the figures back in those days, they were really affordable. You could get figures that were like $10 or $15 or $20, you know? And yeah, I mean, I bought so many figures all the time. And I mean, it was overwhelming, like, oh, no, you cannot buy all of the Oscar things. Also, a lot of it just started getting way more expensive, like way more expensive. So, you know, I buy some stuff occasionally, like the Pops. I was really excited when Oscar got not one, but 2 Funkos. That's right. Does Shinji have 2 Funko Pops? He does.
No.
I mean, there should be, I guess there are technically multiple rays, they all look the same, but anyway, yes, I do still collect it. I've really gotten into like a lot of the t-shirts, but again, you can't buy every Oscar t-shirt because there's just a zillion of them, you know. I have one that I'm gonna wear tomorrow that's kind of a vintage one. I've probably had it for at least about 15 years. But, you know, it used to be harder to find this stuff, and now it's, you know, everywhere.
So even if something sounds good while I'm recording it, or while we're initially mixing it, when we get it in there, like, oh, okay, it's so spread out because of blah, 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 we need to do a slightly different approach. I get to do that for films. For TV series, it's a smaller environment. It depends on whether or not I'm watching it in stereo or if it's in 5.1 and has a subwoofer track and a center channel and all that kind of stuff. I listen for those things as well. I do the same process with a booth review. I watch everything, make sure that everything's accounted for. I look over the hard copy of the script and go through the whole thing, scrolling through, make sure every line's highlighted and make sure everything's represented as complete. Make sure there's not like an off-screen line that I don't immediately notice because someone is on screen doing this and their line's not there. I can see that one. If someone's off screen and there's no movement like that, I have to make sure that I catch that via the script because I may not catch it on the watch through unless it really stands out as something important. But these are all just me being like really excessively a completionist and making sure I did my job properly. These are things that, you know, as I go through and record them, I'm going to do them, but I'm just making sure I didn't mess up one day, you know. But that's it. Generally, it's like the timeline and the amount of materials that I'm working with that I have to study. Yeah.
Is part of your job making sure the cadence of the voice actors' deliveries match up with the movement of the mouths and the animation?
It is. The interesting thing about that is you can have 10 people in the room that all have 10 to 20 to 30 years of experience and they're all going to see them a little bit differently. So some people will see, you know, think that a line looks short and someone else will like, what are you talking about? It looks great. And someone else will think a line looks long. What are you talking about? It looks fine to me. And some people will be like super bothered if there's a mouth movement and their ends in a big open mouth and the word that they have ends with a T or something rather than a vowel sound. And some people will be really bothered by that and some people won't. Like it's like painting. So, you know, like some people are like, well, this looks like the ocean to me. Like, I think this looks like the ocean. Like, you guys are crazy. This is a photograph and this is what the ocean looks like. There's all sorts of perspective that goes involved with that. But yes, the ADR directors are responsible for what that looks like. I think there is some sort of industry standard where like, it at least has to look like this. Like the sentence can't end and then you have, like that's, no. There's no amount where that's okay unless that's an artistic choice where they're doing like a, you know, a montage and it's just a quick passage of time, there's music playing and you see all that, but that's like what the creator wanted. They wanted it to have that look. But yeah, and we call them mouth flaps, so how the mouth movements look, it's up to the ADR director as far as the pacing, what they think looks tight, what they think looks good, what looks natural, that's on them. Mm-hmm.
Is there a certain amount of visual editing that can be done to help with that? Like if a line's weird or needs to be a certain way?
Well, the thing is, there is, but not to the picture. Like, we do not touch the animation. The only time that anything like that ever gets done, let's say for instance, where a movie is being put into American theaters and there's a whole bunch of text information on there. The only thing that I could possibly think would happen is that there's so much text that there can't be up here and subtitled or whatever at the bottom, and you may have to start going over it so that everything looks complete, like here's a phone and there's 20 messages on it and they have one by each of those messages rather than trying to list them at the bottom. That's the only time that the animation gets like, you know.
So you could never like pause the animation slightly beforehand on like a sound instead of like.
Now because you are changing what is to not be changed. Like it'd be like editing the music or something like that. If you have permission to do so, great. But as far as like me going, the perfect way to say this line where it has the most impact and the most meaning is 3 flaps, like short. Like my line comes up short. Can we just not have that? I don't get to make that call. So like, I have had people like go, oh, they said it this way in the manga and it's such a great line. I'm like, but it doesn't fit, like at all. Like I could, you know, please come and help me. Like my producers were like, no, please rewrite that line. That doesn't work. So as far as you can edit the writing, like I can go through and like, hey, there's a big pause in the middle of this line that wasn't accounted for in the writing. They wrote right through it and I could see it. Typically we go by frames as far as looking at stuff. And for video in this part of the world, it's about 30 frames per 1 second. So for each 1 second of screen time, there's 30 different pictures that make up the movement of animation, or like video as well, like a live action as well. It's the same thing. For film stuff, it's 24 frames, and for television and video, it's 30 frames a second. So I can say, I see this pause. It's like 5 or 6 frames long, which is really noticeable to me in the middle of a sentence. If it's 1 or 2 frames, that's really quick. That could just be the equivalent of me closing my mouth in between like the letter M or something like that. It's pretty fast. But if it seems long enough to me, I'll rewrite the line. I at least have a lot of experience as an adaptive writer as well. So I'm going to rewrite the line, make it mean the same thing, make it flow well, and put a pause there because I see one that the writer didn't account for. And that's the kind of editing and power that I can do. I'll still have to turn that into someone, and someone will still have to look over it and like quality check it and make sure that, yes, that is what I'm supposed to say. It still means what it means in the original context and all those sorts of things. But because I've like been doing it a long time, I'm certainly not going to change it to something that's questionable or that gets sent along where someone's like, hey, this isn't right at all. So as far as the editing of things like that, I can edit what is being said. I cannot edit the animation. Yeah. It has that much wear and tear on them. If it's a technical thing that I can fix, that me and my engineer can fix, I obviously can't fix it myself. It's my engineer who does all of that cool hard work. We're going to work on that together to see if we can salvage it in a way that still sounds good, where the problem is not noticeable and it's not just like taking away from the moment, taking away from the acting, and taking away from the story. So yeah, via Pro Tools cleanup in some capacity, or doing it again. Yeah.
I have an extremely specific question.
I may have an extremely specific answer. We'll find out.
You said you worked on Yu Yu Hakusho, right?
Correct.
Did you work with Justin Cook when he did the Dark Tournament art?
I don't know specifically if I worked with him on the Dark Tournament art. I will say, I worked with him, directing him as Yusuke for like maybe the first couple of episodes, like just a little bit, so that he got comfortable with where he was cast and where his voice set and how to approach the character. And from that point on, mostly Justin directed himself.
There was one specific scene in the Dark Tournament where he takes in Genkai's power And we watched that scene forever ago, and he screams for like 3 minutes
Yeah.
straight.
He's screaming through a cat.
It's so nuts how long he carries this scream on, and I wanted to know about it.
Well, all I could say about, because I wasn't there for that one, I can say that in general, if a person is full on screaming at their full capacity, just really letting
It
the
is
world have it,
Everything he has.
Yeah.
your lungs can probably only deliver, maybe 40 seconds of that tops, without taking a breath in, where you're just like, just blasting it like a cannon. So if it was indeed 3 minutes and it never stops, there's no breaths, there's no pauses in there anywhere, he probably screamed and then screamed another one and they meshed them together and then he screamed another one and meshed them together in some capacity. Because human beings can't just, with no pause for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Robots
I
can.
I don't get how he just wasn't like collapsed.
At the end of it.
Now, he may have. Justin Cook has passed out in the booth before, more than once. And if you're in a booth and you're screaming and you're going for it and things like that, you may not be aware of like how much air you're not taking in because it's just going out, and you're gonna pass out. And that's happened to him on occasion. So, yeah. So maybe that was when he did it. I know for sure that he has passed out in the booth before. So,
Sounds like you probably would.
yeah.
So during your time working with One Piece, have you seen kind of changes from like your earlier time working with them to kind of like where it's at right now in regards to just your ADR job and just overall voice acting?
A little bit, but I also feel like I've grown with the show. I think the show, and for those who continue to watch, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the show is so much bigger and broader of a world than what it used to be. Even when you started, which was already a really cool world to begin with, they keep going to new places and we meet new antagonists and we meet new friends and we find out new things about everyone in the main cast, like, oh wow, you have this power. Oh wow, you have this history. Oh, this was your father. All these sorts of things as it keeps going. And that helps broaden that world. It helps give more depth to the characters in there, and it gives me more to work with as the ADR director. I feel like, I don't think it's as stark a difference as, like, say, Attack on Titan Season 1 versus where it is now, where it's like kind of fun times here and there, and then super not fun times at all anymore. But I do feel that, like, there's a lot more dramatic and emotional weight as the show continues. Like, they put a lot more of that in there, while still every so often allowing Usopp and Chopper and Frankie and Unison to do something stupid, like for fun. That's still there, and that's part of the show, and that's never going to go away, and I love that part of the show. But I also feel that there is a lot that happens that there's just a lot more drama and there's a lot more weight as the show continues. And by stupid, I of course mean it's a gag moment. There's no stupid characters in the show. It's just a gag moment. But yeah. So it's